Hi, my name is Jennifer Christensen. I am the high school 3D teacher at Great Bend High School. I am in my 13th year of teaching and I have taught grades K through 12. So, what I'm going to go over today is really basic hand building that you can do with kindergarten through 12th grade. So, I taught for about 7 years as the K7 teacher at Central Plains, Bushton, Hollywood, and Claflin area, very small school. So we were able to do some really cool stuff with the kids. And so if you've never been comfortable with clay, this is the workshop for you. It's going to be very relaxed and very easy. So we're going to take you through some steps, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is some of the things we're going to go over. So I'm going to just take my little PowerPoint here. Sorry about it being a little rough. But I want to talk about what we're going to really go over. So basic attachments is what you really focus on in any of your beginning clay classes. So scoring, or for little kids, you can call it scratching, slip, smoothing, and then the building techniques themselves will be pinch, coil, and slab. I will find a way to get this very simple PowerPoint to you. It's only 3 slides, but it's important for this reason. These are a list of the projects that I did successfully with my K5 kids. And I'm going to show you a few of these. Um, and honestly, they all worked pretty well, except for maybe the dragons were a little complex for my fourth graders when I tried them. And I had a habit of when I was doing clay projects to only do one project with them a year, which looking back now, I kind of wish I had done more, but each to their own and what you feel comfortable with. These are some middle school beginner projects. This can be adapted for, I believe 6 through 9. If kids have never touched clay before, these are all really nice projects to get them those beginner lessons of how to make a pinch pot, how to make attachments, and learn to use the clay in a successful manner. So that's what we're going to go over today. And hopefully you'll learn some stuff. So for this workshop, it is working under the assumption that you do not already have a working knowledge of clay. So if you are not a beginner, this might be not new information for you. So what I want to talk about now is the type of clay. So I'm going to show you my other video here. Let's see. And we're going to work this way. All right. Hopefully you can see my tabletop. So when I taught elementary, I used white low fire clay for a couple of different reasons. One, it was a lot easier to do painting, and if you accidentally had transparent glaze, it didn't affect anything that much because the 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 clay would fire white. So if you are absolutely new to ceramics, your first firing should be between 04 and 06. And it's very important you get those zeros in front of the number. And honestly, there were times that instead of letting the kids glaze, like my littles, I would actually let them paint instead of glaze their projects, which is totally acceptable. So I want to talk a little bit of some of the cold finishes that we used, which means that after it was bisqued, it was painted and never fired again. So some of the things that I did actually would be watercolor, which gives you this beautiful pastel effect. Tempera cakes or just regular tempera works really well. It does get a little chalky, so I like to seal it with triple coat, clear, crystal clear triple coat. You can get it at Walmart. It's just a very heavy duty acrylic spray paint, and it just gives it a bit of a shine. You can also do colored pencils on clay, believe it or not. We did clay leaves with my fourth graders one time, and we painted the whole thing black and then had them go over with warm colors, and it created a really nice contrast, and it was really pretty. And I apologize for my computer keeping freezing, but you do what you can, right? Okay, so I used white clay, white low fire, so that I could have the flexibility in my finishes because not everyone wants to get glaze out for kindergarten, first and second graders. So I did not always use the glazes for them. And let's see, I used low fire And that's about the most important information. At my middle school level, we also use low fire, and at the high school, we use mid fire clay. So what that means is it fires a little higher for glaze only. Now, I want to make that very clear. If you are a high school teacher and you are here for the basics and you have mid fire clay, I was under the assumption that just you fired. How did that work? You bisqued to 04, and then you glazed to 05. Okay, so when I went to high fire or mid fire clay, I assumed it was the same, and that is incorrect information. All first firings, all of them should be 04, 05, or 06. Do not bisque any higher than that. And if you're wondering what bisque means, it means after the first firing. And after that, it is no longer recyclable. Okay, so regardless of what clay body you have, you will bisque at 04, 05, or 06. So keep that in mind. So that is the only difference. It's the glaze temperature. There is some vitrification stuff, but we're working with really basics for this workshop. Okay, so on to building. I'm going to show you a couple things that I taught my students, and I'm going to go through, I would say 2 or 3 projects that you can start with using pinch pots and maybe some coil work. So let's get this off and okay, so for my younger students, my first graders, we would always start with pinch pots. And so I would give them a little bit of clay, and I highly recommend that you start weighing out your clay for the simple fact of even for the years I've been doing it, these probably weigh 2 different amounts. So I had bought a little kitchen scale that you weigh food with. And honestly, that's what I weighed all my clay with. And my students would use about half a pound to a pound of clay per project, give or take some scraps. So I'm going to show you one of my first grade projects, which was actually a ladybug, and they loved it. So I would teach them pinch pots. And we start by rolling it into a ball. Okay. Doesn't have to be a perfect ball. You need to tell them that, or they will spend the entire class time rolling this into a ball. Okay, so you're going to take your thumb and you're going to smash that in there, okay? Just about to there, like your first knuckle. This is maybe a quarter amount of clay. I'm working with very small amounts just because this is a demo. And then I always tell my kids to make a duck face, okay? I don't know if you guys can see that. Duck, duck, duck. Okay, so the reason I teach them this is so that they know the placement of their fingers. Because when you are inside the pinch pot, your hand should look like this. Should look like you're a Muppet, like Kermit the Frog here, or Duck, and you are pinching and turning, and pinching and turning. Now, 2 things to keep in mind. As they do this, this curve of your hand is going to make like a bowl shape, and it keeps it that you're less likely to plate, because a lot of them will start doing like this nonsense, or they'll have all their fingers in there and it'll be a plate. So I always teach them to use ducks, quack, quack. I even do this to my high schoolers. They roll their eyes so bad, but it still helps them use just the tips of their fingers, and we make a little pinch pot. Okay. Now, I do not use slip in my classrooms, even at the high school level, because honestly, I don't like making slip. It goes bad. It doesn't, I can't keep enough of it around. So I use water or vinegar, depending on what I'm doing. I use vinegar in my home studio and water at school. So I'm going to show you that. So to make a ladybug, okay, and I do like to smooth out. I tell all my students I am an obsessive smoother, so it's a bit of a problem. Okay, so I'm just going to go make 2 pinch pots, okay? And so they should be roughly the same size. They don't have to be perfect. Okay, so you got 2 pinch pots that are kind of the same size, right? We take one of the pinch pots and we cut it in half. And of course, I don't have anything to cut with. Oh. Now, at the elementary level, I give my students butter knives. High schoolers get fettling knives. That'll work. But my little kids get, I honestly just had a box of plastic butter knives that I reused every year. Okay, so I've cut this in half, and I tell them to kind of smooth out this edge. I'm going to get a little bit of water because it's really dry in my room right now. And they will want to like slather this with water. That's a little much. So you've got to tell them water is not your best friend. You just want a little. Too much water is bad. Okay, and so I've got one little thing here. Smooth this one out. One little thing here. Okay, so this is very, very basic. I did this with first graders. Okay, so we're going to attach that like so to create the body of the ladybug. Okay, so now I want to show you some tricks here. My number one favorite tool in the elementary classroom was a dull pencil. You always had them. They work really great for scratching. Okay, you can use them to scratch. You can use them for detail. The old saying is, you can use anything for clay, and that is the truth. I used dull pencils 4 years in my elementary room. Never had a lot of problems. Okay. The other thing you can use is a bamboo skewer. These work nicely, except for kids will try to play with them. This is what I gave my high schoolers this year because they can't share needle tools. Okay. And then the last thing is an empty mechanical pencil, which I'll show you what I normally use those for here in a minute. Okay, so like I said, I don't use slip. I use just water. I'm sorry, I got a big bucket. I don't have water in my room. And I just tell the kids, tap your hands in there, okay, and just put it on one side. I usually had them line up their little wings on the sides. So I'd pinch it gently, okay, and I'd do this side and this side. Okay, and there we have a very rough ladybug. I'm trying to get as fast so I can get as much stuff into this project or this workshop as possible. Okay, and I have them, smooth this little bit out. So we've covered pinch already, cutting of clay, and now we've gotten one attachment. And I could get this done with first graders this much in a half-hour class. That was my half-hour classes. I can't remember if it would take, I think it would take me 2 class periods to get the whole bug done. So now she needs a head. So you just take a little piece of clay, again, roll it up into a ball. Okay, and it's kind of, I like to make them little kind of roundish shapes. That's just me. And it goes right here. Okay, so again, I'm going to scratch. I tell my kids, rough up that clay. You've got to rough it up or it's not going to work. And the head's going to attach here. A little bit of water. Okay. And you gently squeeze it on. Now, if you have a ball, generally the kids are going to smush that so it's a little flatter. And then I tell them to smooth out underneath. This is for little kids, okay? Okay. Now, what's great about the ladybugs is now you can teach them some texture tools. I don't have a marker here, but I'm going to show you what we would do with the markers. So we would have Crayola markers, and we would just have them press the backs into our ladybug shell here for our dots. As many as they wanted. They could do crazy stuff. They could do a bunch or a little. It was really up to them. Okay. And there's your basic ladybug. Now, if you want to get fancy with it, which is what I would do, is I would actually poke 2 holes in the top. Just little holes. We would glue fuzzy pipe cleaners to the tops of these when they were done. So we'd have 2 little sparkly antennae at the top. So there's your basic ladybug. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you, let's see. I could show you a slab castle real quick because it's super easy. Now, when I did slabs for little kids, I would I would roll out the slabs. 5th through, I don't know, would I say 8th, you could probably give a rolling pin to, and it would be totally okay. But my little kids, I just rolled out their slabs for you. So I'm gonna grab a rolling pin and show you how to do a castle. Okay, so I have my rolling pin here. This is gonna be a little castle because I'm trying not to take too much of this workshop for all of the projects. I could do workshops just on some of the elementary stuff that I used to do. Let's. And if you're wondering what I'm working on, this is just birch cabinet grade plywood. Okay, so now the complexity of this castle means that you can change what grade level you do this for. I've done this with upper grades, making them add more turrets and things like that. And I've done it with second graders with what I'm going to show you now. Okay. And honestly, it takes a little bit of their, what's that word? Motor skills to do this. So I like to draw on stuff before I cut it. This is the bottom. Well, I can just cut that one. And we're going to make a very, very simple castle. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice stair stepping. So I want ups and downs. And if this is a bigger slab, I could get more out of it, but I'm going to show you. Okay, so I've got my little bric-a-brac. I'm going to cut it out. And it never fails. Somebody's going to cut off one too many, and that's okay. All right, so I would honestly do these about 6 inches long instead of this little bitty one. And again, obsessive smoother. I apologize. I just can't help myself. Okay, so now what you would do is you would turn this, roll it, so that it would overlap. Oh, I didn't go far enough down. Hold on. You can cut with a pencil too. You do not have to have fancy tools. What I don't like is that I just made marks on my brand new board. Oh well. Okay, so when you roll it, it should. And if you are an elementary teacher and have not figured out that you have to let go, control, that's something you need to do. Now, this is a very, very small example. I did this at summer camp with a girls' camp, and they were a little bit bigger, so they were about like this, okay? And all we did, honestly, was paint them with watercolors, so it gave them pastel, and we put glitter acrylic paint on top to make it look glittery and seal it, and it worked beautifully. So then you've got your little castle or crown or whatever it is, okay? So I'm going to go through these really quick, and I do apologize. If you have other questions, feel free to email me and ask, because I would be more than happy to talk with people one-on-one. All right. The last one I want to talk about is the big mouth creatures that I normally do at middle school for beginner learners. And the reason I do this project is I can show a lot of the creature stuff that I do. I make dragons and turtles and little creatures at my house. So what I want to show you is that real quick, because kids love making the weird stuff. So this is really 2 pinch pots. So I'm going to try, I don't know if these are the same. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to make a miniature version. And this is where a lot of the skills come in, okay? I'm going to show you pinch, attach, slab, and coil. So if you want to hit all of those with your upper grades, this is a great thing to do because you can give them a lot of creativity and a lot of ideas, okay? So now what I like to do is tap that so it's kind of flat. And again, scratch and attach, a little bit of water. And because this is a middle school lesson, I'm going to show you one more little trick of how to get them to use slip. Now you can give them slip if that makes you feel better. I just don't do it. Okay, so again, obsessive smoother here. All right, so you have your two pieces and they mostly match. Okay, and you'll notice that the kids will be really strangely off, but you might have to help some of them. And a lot of them will over pinch, especially here. You got to tell them to leave the tops pretty much alone. So we're gonna scratch both sides. Okay. And if you're buying clay and it's super sticky, you might have them work with it. I have noticed that a lot of my clay is coming in really, really wet, and it makes it a little difficult. There is a magic, not magic, I guess a really nice level of moisture that you want to work hand building with, and that sticky clay is not it. So there's that. All right. Now, at the middle school and high school level, and even with your elementary kids, you can use the toothbrush, okay? And what you do with the toothbrush is I get it wet, and you literally scrub it along the sides of your piece. There are some folks that don't score even. They actually just take their toothbrush and they kind of aggressively scrub the top, which makes a layer of slip. And the more you use this, the more clay you're going to have in there that creates a slip brush. So, and then you can just stick this together. I gave all of my students toothbrushes this year, and it works really well. Now, this next part, there's two ways to do this. Okay, I can roll out a coil and put it along the seam, or you can just very carefully smooth it off. Now, when I taught little or middle schoolers, I had them make a coil. It just seemed they were able to get it, and it was less likely that they were going to accidentally collapse their project. I make my high schoolers smooth across if their clay isn't too dry. So if you can get that clay to move across, then you're good. Now, I use my fingers for almost everything. I don't use a lot of hand tools, but if you're having a kid with difficulty or with sensory issues, tools are great. You can use um, like this one's one of my favorites because it's got this curved end. Okay, and you can kind of use it like a fingertip. Okay, but for me, it's just faster to use my thumbs, honestly. Okay, so your kids will be like, well, this is a lumpy, ugly ball. And you'll be like, yep, sure is. So you can give them a wooden spoon. You can give them a paddle made out of trim from the door place. Wooden spoons are easy to find. These are easy to find. I think this is a 8-inch block. Um, and you can just tap it and it's going to compress the clay, make it a little stronger, and you can kind of smooth it out. Now, when you're doing this, you want to watch the edge that you're paddling. Don't let them just flop it or you're going to have a weird spot. And I tell my high schoolers the same thing, and all they want to do is hit it really hard, but you really want to tap around to do this. Okay, so when I started doing these big mouth creatures, I'm sure I saw it somewhere. This is not an original idea. But the idea that I used for my middle schoolers is that it was supposed to be a sponge holder. So they were supposed to have really big mouths and some features. Okay, so wherever you put your mouth, you kind of need to, I always have my kids really kind of draw everything on first so that they kind of have an idea of what they're doing. So Okay, so one of the first things I have them do is open up the mouth. You want to be careful that they don't go clear across the middle, or otherwise they're going to collapse their little sphere. Okay, and then if they can get their fingers in there, I like them to have to smooth out the ball from the inside. And sometimes if they have a lump or they want a different shape, this is where you can kind of really manipulate it. So you can push in on the outside and it'll, okay, see it, change the shape of the ball just a little bit. Okay, and I have no idea what this guy's going to be. I don't have a plan. I'm just going to show you all the attachments that I show my students. Okay, so the first thing I tell them is he can't roll around. I can't have to worry about him in the kiln. So I always put him down on the table. Okay, decide where his mouth is going to point and push down so that the sphere has a flat spot. Okay, so now we're going to show you, or now I'm going to show you all the weird stuff that I teach my kids to make creatures with. The only thing I can't show you is the garlic press because I don't have one here to show you. So I tell them they need eyes and they need at least, I don't know, 4 attachments. So we're going to start with some eyes. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do it because people like choice. So I start with a ball of clay. This is eye number 1. Start with a ball of clay, okay, and I gently smash it down so I get a flat raised up disc. Okay, so I'm going to scratch and attach. Around here, a little bit of water. Gently press that in. Okay, and then I like to take, hope you guys can see this. I can't see it. All right, I like to take my tools and right around the edge of that, smooth that seam. It just seems to help get it stuck on there. I have had kids skip this step and scratching, and you open the kiln and all their little pieces have fallen off. So it's always fun. You can also take your finger with a little bit of water. Just go around. That's a little too much. And smooth it out that way. Now that would be like a bulbous eye, like it's sticking out. Now to give him eyelids, okay, I'm going to show you how to give him eyelids. You take a coil. Come on. My clay's getting dry. Okay. I like to, let's make him angry. Smooth out here and here, and I like to take a tool. Now we're in advanced stuff. This is where you can get your high schoolers, because if they do more complex attachments, then it's a more complex project. Okay, now I've got an upper lid, and I can do the same thing on the bottom. Okay, so I can give him a bottom lid too. Now, the other thing you can do here is kind of give it an expression. I'm going to do some weird stuff here. All right, so that's eyeball number 1. You can leave it like this, or you can take a tool, give him a pupil. Oop, that's sticky. Okay, or you can paint that on later. The other thing they can do is if they are intimidated by that, because that is a lot. Some kids will go for it. Some kids will take one look at that and go, oh no, no, no. So you show them the slab method. And that's where you take your ball of clay. Okay, gently smash. So it's a disc. Or you can have them roll out a slab. It is entirely up to you. Grab my little rolling pin here. I can show you. And you can draw an oval shape. So I'm going to have an oval and a little eyelash, just like a cartoon, basically. Okay, and they can cut that out. Doesn't have to be perfect. So I kind of like that. So, and then they can attach it upright, which gives it more dimension. So I like to tell my kids we need dimension, we need like texture would be nice. Okay, so I'm going to scratch and attach this. It's going to be a little messed up creature. A little bit of water. That's probably too much. Okay, and if you're doing eyes like this one, take a little bit of clay. And support the back of it. So I'm smoothing down and I'm very carefully smoothing up. Now this is a really thin piece. I recommend the kids work a little bit thicker for their own sanity. Okay, and so now you've got this like stuck up eye, which is kind of neat and it's got a different look than this. And of course, if you've got that one intimidated child that hates everything you show them, just show them to draw it on there. And that's okay too, if you're all right with it. Okay, doesn't have to be complex. Now, let's talk about feet and hands, because sometimes you're going to have kids that are like, well, I want this, I want that. So, your basic foot, and I always tell my kids think in Tootsie Rolls because, one, Tootsie Rolls are delicious, and two, it's an identifiable shape that they remember. Need a little bit of that. So when I teach this, I always like, okay, get your little Tootsie Roll, because once we've got a Tootsie Roll shape, we can make a lot of stuff. So, start with my little Tootsie Roll. Okay, Tootsie Roll shape. That's what I'm talking about. These little fat logs. They're great. Okay. Your most basic foot. This is where you show the kids. Okay. You hold the Tootsie Roll shape about 3/4 of the way down. I hope you can see this. And you tap at an angle so that that foot makes a little pad. You see the little foot? Now you've got your most basic, and you can turn it, and you got a paw foot looking thing. Okay, that is your most basic little foot. Now, to make a claw, you take your Tootsie Roll, you tap to make the foot, and you pinch it down just a little bit. What I like to do is I like 3 toes. So 1, 2, 3. And there you've got a little claw foot. Okay, so now he's got little claw feet that you would attach, or a little regular foot. Now hands. Okay, there's a couple ways to make hands. Maybe they want a claw, that's okay. I'm going to show you. So, you take your Tootsie Roll. This is why I teach them Tootsie Roll first. It's not flat enough. Okay, and you squish down one side. Okay, so from this little, you see how it's kind of flat? To make it a human mitten, just kind of cut out a little bit. And then you smooth over the thumb. You get a mitten. And mittens are great. They can be hands. Okay. If you've got a more particular kid that wants actual hands, you can kind of go in there, be very careful, and create little hands. And of course, you could always cut them into little claws as well. I mean, there's not a huge difference. So you can kind of show them. Okay. So those are some claws and feet, hands. Oh, let's talk about wings because it never fails. You always have those kids. Wings, either bird wings, butterfly wings, bat wings. Okay. So you get your little slab. And I will tell you, I use slab sticks at school, which are just two pieces of, actually, they're Sherwin-Williams 5-gallon bucket sticks that I use on either side of my rollers when I roll, because we don't have a slab roller at school. Okay, so I always tell my kids to draw it out first. They will want to just cut it, and then they'll dry out all their clay, and you'll hear nothing but grumpiness. So this is going to be a weird wing. I'm not really going for anything. Well, maybe I should. Here, let's do a birdie wing. Here. You can do any kind of wing, but for my purposes, we're going to do a little bird wing. Still looks like a dragon wing. Oh well. So I'm going to cut this out. You'll see that it's not perfect. Okay. I'm going to put it on top of the other one and I'm going to trace it. Now, if they've got some pre-planning going, you could have this cut out a tag board to use as a tracer. Okay, so once you have both wings, oh, this one didn't get cut out. Okay, you can attach them to your little critter like so. Now, if you are working with high school or middle school students and they don't like that thick edge, which most, younger kids, they're just so excited to work with clay, they don't care. Older kids, I have them pinch just the edges and smooth it out so that it appears less thick. I mean, you still have the strength there, but right at the edge it's a little thinner, and it'll give the illusion that it's a thinner piece. Okay, and then you can attach it. Now, I will tell you, wings and things are very, very fragile, so if you've got a kid doing a lot of them, you'll be the one loading that kiln, so, take prepared caution. Again, I like to smooth around my seams. If your kids are digging into their clay so much, like they go digging, have them put a coil around any of their attachments like this, and it tends to help. The same method could be used for ears, and you could take that and turn it into an ear instead. Okay, so these are some of the techniques that I use to create creatures. The last thing I do want to talk about is coils, because that's something kids really struggle with. And my students especially get really grumpy about coils. But honestly, it teaches them a lot about clay and moisture. So when I have my kids do coil pots, they hate me. But you know what? It's good for them. So I just, they learn what clay feels like when it's too dry, when it crumbles, things like that. But I want to show you a little bit of how to roll coils. If you are also unfamiliar, I like to prime a coil by squishing it in my hands a little bit to help with that shape. And you'll see a lot of kids do this. And when they do that, they're only rolling half of their clay and they can't figure out why it is not working. When I teach coil pots, I make the kids stand up. They have to use the tip of their fingers to the edge of their hands to get a nice coil. And you're trying to teach them to use even balance, even pressure to get a nice coil. Spread out my fingers. And honestly, it's not a talent thing, it's a practice thing. The more they do, which is why I make my upperclassmen do like 8 to 10-inch coil pots, is because the more they do, the easier it gets and the more skilled they'll become. And so then you can have a coil. Little kids, it's amazing to me, little kids will do better with coils for some reason because they've already had experience with Play-Doh and they can do little things with coils that are in a pot. So sometimes you can just get them to, fill in designs. And that's kind of fun. So just a little side note on coils that I want to throw in there before I ran out of time. Just, because it doesn't have to be this big scary thing. Okay, and then you have these kind of design things. So let's see. Recap. Don't be afraid of clay. Have fun with it. As simple as letting the kids just squish it in their hands, sometimes that makes cool things. One of my my kindergarten lessons is a shoe stamp pendant where they really just take a ball of clay and stamp it with their feet, and the bottoms of their shoes create the texture, and they love that. So don't be afraid of it. If you need help loading a kiln or not loading, running your kilns, reach out to the community. There are tons of people out here to help you. We're trying to make sure that you're not afraid to use clay in your classroom. Anyway, thanks for joining, and I hope you guys have a good rest of the year.